Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
Casual acquaintance at the club, or not. Today's story with a similar plot. Enjoy it! My second nightmare began with a call from my mother, which is probably not surprising. She tends to be right in the middle of most of the bad things that have happened to me, one way or another. My mother was the one who urged me to forgive Jenny during our engagement when she lied to me about having dinner with her old boyfriend. She loves you, Nikki, and you're lucky to have her. She's a great girl. Don't let that little thing ruin what you have. Even in the middle of my first nightmare, when one would expect a mother to be completely on her son's side in a crisis, she continued to tell me that it was at least partly my fault. Jenny wouldn't have done what she did for no reason. It cannot be as it seems, and so on. Thank you, Mom. So where did I stop? Ah, yes, my second nightmare. It all started with a call from my mother. The phone rang around 11:15 on Saturday, just as I was walking through the door from karate class. I was drenched in sweat, looking forward to a shower and lunch, but that's not what I got. In response, I received a huge fist on the head. Hello, Nikki, it's me. How are you, baby? I sighed. My mom loves to talk. I stood in the kitchen until the sweat dried on my back. Hey, Mom, I'm fine. How are you? She chatted for a few minutes about Naomi Alberon and her hip, about the neighbor's dog that barked at night and kept her awake, about how the taxes on her house were going up. I listened with half an ear, sipping my beer, and waited for her to get down to business. When she did, I regretted that I had even picked up the phone. Nikki, I wanted to talk to you about Jenny. She waited a second, but I was too stunned to say anything, so she continued. She called me last night, and we talked for a long time. She really wants to see you, baby, but is afraid to call, so she asked for my advice. This time I found my voice. Well, she should be afraid to talk to me, Mom. I have nothing to say to her, and she can't tell me anything that I would be interested in hearing. Well, don't be like that, honey. I know she hurt you, but it was a long time ago. And what are you talking about? Offend me? Do you think that one word covers what she did? And that was just recently, 7 months ago. Believe me, I will never forget, no matter how long ago it was. Nikki, don't you dare raise your voice at me. I sighed, moved the phone away from my ear, and waited. I told her she should be brave and just call you. I told her I was sure you would be fair and give her the opportunity to come to you and say what she wants to say. Okay, Mom, I'll be as fair to her as she is to me. Suddenly, I couldn't take it anymore. Listen, Mom, I need to finish the conversation. I'll talk to you soon, and I hung up before she could say another word. Jesus Christ on a bicycle. Jenny wanted to see me. How cute. How damn cute. I knew it wasn't over yet. I knew this because I knew my mother, and I knew Jenny well. I once thought I knew Jenny, but now I wasn't sure I knew her at all. The Jenny I thought I knew, the Jenny I loved with all my heart, was nothing like the one who tore my heart and lungs from my chest and trampled on them while smiling in my face. The next week, I received 3 more calls from my mother, all on the same topic, and a letter from Jenny. When I saw her familiar handwriting on the envelope, I winced, as if I had swallowed 6 cups of espresso at once. My heart started beating wildly, and I suddenly wanted to punch something. I threw the envelope straight into the trash and went out into the backyard to do some sparring exercises. It took me almost an hour to calm down. A week later, when I returned from work, there was a message on my answering machine from Jenny. Suspecting nothing, I pressed play, getting myself a drink from the refrigerator. When I heard that voice, I was too shocked to move. Hello, Nick, this is Jenny. I sent you a letter last week. I hope you received it. By then, I had already jumped on the phone like it was a rattlesnake and pressed delete. I probably pressed the damn button 6 times, actually poking at it like I was trying to kill someone. Another rush of adrenaline, another pounding heart. Why won't this damn just leave me alone? I ran upstairs, changed clothes, and went to karate. I decided to stop answering the phone and just let the answering machine screen my calls. Over the next 10 days, 3 more messages came from Jenny, as well as 2 more from my mother and 1 from Jenny's friend Angela, who was her bridesmaid at our wedding. I always liked Angela, but as soon as I heard what she was calling about, I deleted her message too. It was getting out of control. Almost every day when I returned home, I came across an answering machine full of messages that made me nervous and upset. I chose a time when I knew Jenny would be at work and left a message on her answering machine at home. I wrote it in advance, trying to keep it to as few words as possible. This is Nick. I don't want to see you or hear about you. Don't call, don't write, don't come. Of course, I knew it wouldn't work. 2 days later, my mother left me a message. How could you be so cruel to Jenny? She called me crying and told me about your message. Don't you have any feelings for her? Yes, I have feelings for her. I wish I didn't do this, but I do. I want her to fall into quicksand, slowly sink, scream desperately for help while I sit safely on a rock 10 feet away holding the rope and smiling as I watch her die. Mom left me another message asking me to come over on Sunday and move some furniture for her. She still lived in the house where she and my father raised me, and it was becoming increasingly difficult for her to manage things on her own. So, I moved the couch, 2 chairs, the TV cabinet, and the lamps while she fed me tuna salad sandwiches and fussed over me. While I waited for the other shoe to drop, she never mentioned Jenny. So, I knew something was going to happen. And sure enough, while munching on a brownie, I looked out the window and saw a green Jetta, Jenny driving up to the house. Sorry, Mom, I'll be a second, I said and headed to the bathroom. As Mom walked to the front door to let Jenny in, I quietly slipped out of the kitchen and sat in the car in the driveway. As soon as the front door closed behind them, I started the car and drove away. 2 hours later, I called my mother. When she picked up the phone, I didn't even say hello. I just said, if you pull that trick again, this will be the last time you'll see me, and I hung up. Davis sat with me in the kitchen and drank beer. Davis had been my closest friend since high school. He was my best man when I married Jenny. He was my constant sparring partner in karate until my first nightmare with Jenny when I started taking it much more seriously. And he was always the only person in the world I looked up to. Actually, I thought I had 2, but it turns out I was wrong. His real name is Brandon Edward Davidson, but since junior high, everyone just calls him Davis. I was telling him about how Jenny had been trying to contact me, and the look on his face was hard to describe, something like a man who has just swallowed 5 or 6 worms. Lord, Nick, what did you say to her? I told him about my battles with my mother, all the messages I deleted. The ones I left on Jenny's answering machine, and ended with a little dance I had at my mother's house last weekend. I sighed and said, you see what's happening, right? Jenny will never give up. Short of a restraining order, I don't see any way to keep her away from me. Do you have any idea what she wants? Not at all. I just know whatever it is, it can't be good. Every time I hear her voice on the answering machine or see a letter in her handwriting, my blood pressure goes through the roof. I swear I was thinking about quitting my job and moving somewhere else. Yeah, except she'll probably track you down even if you move to Mongolia. She's a piranha, Nick. We were silent for a long time. Then he said, don't be angry, okay? Just listen to me. How about you agreeing to meet her, and when she showed up, I was here with you. I don't want to see her, Davis. I don't want to see her, hear her voice, or even think about her, damn it. I know, buddy, but you just said she'll never let it go, no matter what it is. Why not just get it over with? I sighed sadly. Let me think about it, okay? Perhaps you're right. One unpleasant hour, and maybe I can get rid of her. The following Saturday, I watched from the kitchen window as Jenny sauntered down the path, wearing the yellow sundress that had always been one of my favorites. I couldn't look at her, hell, I couldn't even think about her without strong and complex feelings. She was absolutely beautiful, still the woman of my dreams. She was small and slender, with light blue eyes and gorgeous blonde hair that reached 6 inches below her shoulders. And she had the young, innocent face of an angel, irrefutable proof that God has a seriously sick sense of humor. When the door opened, she said, "Hey, baby, I'm so." Davis cut her off. "Yes, it's me, Davis said in an unfriendly voice, holding the door for her to enter the house. I thought Nick might need a little help. He pointed her to a chair in the living room. I took a deep breath and walked out of the kitchen with 3 glasses of water on a tray. This morning, I exercised for an hour and then did 30 minutes of calm breathing. I was going to stay calm, even if it killed me. It didn't matter that my heart was already pounding in my chest. Hi, Jenny, I said quietly and placed the glass in front of her. She gave me a sparkling smile and said, I'm so glad to see you again, dear. I said absolutely nothing to this, instead giving her the most aggressively blank face I could muster. This is your meeting, I thought to myself. Let's continue. Actually, I was hoping we could talk in private, Nick. I don't think so, Jenny. Davis is a good friend. Whatever you want to say to me, you can say in front of him. She hesitated only a moment, then pulled herself together. Okay, baby, if that's what you want. I watched as she gave her face an expression that was both serious and pleading. What the hell does she want, Nick? I understand that I made a terrible mistake, the worst mistake of my life, and I'm very sorry, baby. I want to go home. I love you, only you, and I want us to be together. I thought I was going to faint, and it took all my energy and karate training to keep a straight face. I felt my heart beating like crazy, and I felt a little dizzy. I didn't move across the room. Davis growled, Are you out of your mind? Really not right in the head, you know that. His voice was quiet but icy. After the nightmare you put Nick through, you think you can just walk into this house and pretend nothing happened? I didn't move a single muscle. In fact, I wasn't sure I could stand up without falling. I watched Jenny's face. She looked completely shocked by Davis's furious words. Finally, she managed to smile sadly. Apparently, she decided to ignore Davis because she turned straight to me. I know I did a terrible thing, baby. I really do. You're probably still mad at me, and... Stop it, I said. Just stop, Jenny. Don't say another word. I slowly stood up and walked back to the kitchen, leaving a tense silence behind me. I ran cold water into the sink and splashed it on my face and neck, trying to get my thoughts under control. My brain was working feverishly. It must have been a cruel joke. Someone decided that I wasn't enough yet, so they were going to torture me a little more. I really thought I had gotten through the worst of it, but it seems I was wrong. At that moment, I learned something I would rather not know. I thought that when you really hate someone, you don't love them anymore. But I was wrong. I hated Jenny more than anyone in my life, but my heart sang. I heard the birds chirping sweetly in the trees, and my blood boiled with joy. She wanted to come back again. She loved me, to put it mildly. The discovery that I still loved Jenny, I loved her desperately, did not amuse me. This basically confirmed that I was in the middle of my second nightmare. I walked away from the sink, took a few slow, deep breaths, and walked back into the living room. Jenny and Davis sat in intense silence. They both looked at me. Jenny, it's time for you to go, I said quietly, trying not to show the trembling in my voice. Baby, right now, you have to leave. Right now. You said what you wanted. I don't want to see you or hear about you anymore. I don't see how I can express it more clearly than this. I watched as Jenny's face blurred, and she began to cry. Honey, I know I screwed up, but I really thought we were. Her voice trailed off into sobs. I absolutely, positively could not stand it a moment longer. I turned away, and without turning around, said, Davis, can you help Jenny get to the car? Of course, Guy. Without another word, I headed toward the stairs. I slowly went up to my bedroom, hearing Jenny's voice behind me, desperately screaming. Nick, darling, please. I sat on the bed, feeling numb, and listened to the front door close. Then I waited for Jenny's car to drive away. Finally, it happened, and I trudged downstairs and collapsed on the sofa. Davis returned, turned, and sat down in the chair opposite me. Jesus Christ on the back of a camel, he shook his head in surprise. She just doesn't know anything, does she? After everything, he looked at me and saw tears on my face. Davis, I'm incomplete. What do you mean, Guy? I want to say that I love her. I love her madly. I want her to come back. Can you believe it? I still want her back. I couldn't stand it and started crying, the only time in my life I cried in front of another man. Even at my father's funeral, I managed to control myself until I was left alone. I'm sure Davis was embarrassed, but he was a true friend. He sat down next to me and put his hand on my shoulder, squeezing it tightly, and just held it there while I cried like a baby, like a damn child. I just realized I was telling you about my second nightmare. How about the first one, right? I mean, you were probably thinking, what the hell did she do with this guy? So, I guess I'll tell you about my first nightmare. Not that it was fun. In one famous book, there's a story about a rich guy who was asked how he went bankrupt. He answered, gradually, and then suddenly. That's exactly how my first nightmare happened to me. Only, I didn't know too much about what was happening, gradually. Mostly, this happened behind my back. I had several girlfriends before meeting Jenny, but she surpassed them all. She was gorgeous, funny, attentive, affectionate, honest, or so I thought, and in love. Love with me. I felt like I had won the lottery. I mean, this girl should be with Derek Jeter, not with the girl who would fall in love with your average 24-year-old electrical engineer in Dayton, Ohio. We dated for almost 2 years before I got the courage to ask her to marry me. Even then, even after we slept together for over a year, spending almost every night together at her or mine, I was scared to death that she would say no. But she didn't. She squealed, grabbed the ring, and put it on her finger. And then kissed and hugged me deeply in the middle of the restaurant. People actually applauded. We packed a whole church, a white wedding dress, dropped off a bouquet. Honeymooned in Maui, and then settled into a cute little 3-bedroom house and lived happily ever after, well, scratch it out, forever. Maybe replace it with about 4 years. It wasn't perfect, don't get me wrong. First of all, Jenny loved to party. She loved to dance. In general, she liked to go out and have fun much more than I did. One night at a club every 2 weeks was enough for me, while she preferred a couple of times a week. But we compromised. Sometimes we did as she wanted, and we went to a club, usually with a couple of her friends. Sometimes they did as I wanted, and we rented a video and stayed at home. The great thing was that both nights ended with us making love. Making love to her was amazing, sometimes loving and tender, sometimes energetic and hot. I've never been with a woman who gave herself so completely to me, who felt so open and complete the moment we did it. Our other problem is that I couldn't stop thinking that she was too good for me. How did I get into this film? I thought, a guy like me won't get a girl like her in real life. Kevin James would only marry Angelina Jolie in some stupid romantic comedy. Not that I'm like him, but you know what I mean. But she loved me and showed it all the time, and gradually, my worries faded into the background. Whoever God wants to, as they say, will first ease his worries. Or if it's not a proverb, it should be. It started gradually, about 4 months before, suddenly. Of course, I didn't know anything about it at the time. In fact, most of what I'm about to tell you is something I pieced together later. While this was happening, I didn't suspect anything, like the brainless husband cliché. When we went to clubs, she almost always danced with other guys. Sometimes I danced with other women, but mostly I was happy to drink beer and watch her. I wasn't as much of a dance fan as she was. Jenny was so beautiful and so hot on the dance floor that there were always guys wanting to dance with her. There was a really cute guy there one night who danced with her 3-4 times. But I never would have thought anything of it if it wasn't for what happened later. The rest of the evening was completely normal, including Jenny slowly dancing with me a couple of times and hugging me as close as she could. We went home and had a fantastic night, as we often did after nights out. Well, turns out this guy is Alec, and doesn't the name itself tell you what he is? Most guys named Alexander are called Alex or, I think, Sandy. But not this jerk. He should be Alec, like I'm so special, normal nicknames don't suit me. So, this guy Alec thinks Jenny is super hot, which she is, and doesn't care at all that she's married. So, he asks her friend what her last name is and where she works, and then he's going to get into her pants. The guy was an actor, nothing special, but for Dayton, I think. He did a few TV commercials in Chicago and some theater productions, and he had a very flexible schedule. So, he checked out the office building where Jenny works, found out where the people who work there go to eat, kept an eye on Jenny, and managed to bump into her about a week after he danced with her at a club. He played it very cool. "Oh, hi. How are you? What a nice surprise. Remember, I'm Alec. We danced in the Mercedes last week, etc." So, Jenny invites him to hang out with her and her friends, and he makes up some nonsense about why he often eats in the area. That's where it all started, and I'm sure you can guess a lot of the rest. The only real question is how hard or easy it was for him to pin her down, and I don't know the answer to that question. If it was difficult, if she started all this while still trying to be a faithful wife, then I'm sure he did it very slow and carefully, random coincidences. Then a random dinner invitation, then another one a couple of weeks later, and so on. If only it was easy. If Jenny was giving off approachable vibes, and who the hell knows at this point, I don't know. Of course, he probably moved faster, then suggesting lunch in a public place, then probably somewhere more private, maybe a picnic in a secluded part of the park. Maybe lunch in the hotel restaurant with comfortable rooms right upstairs. Anyway, he got into her pants in 3 weeks or 10, I have no idea, but the result was the same. But I bet what happened next took Alec by surprise. Jenny fell in love with him, or she wondered, who the hell actually knew what was going on in her head? I once thought so. In any case, I have no doubt that Alec was only thinking about getting the extremely attractive lady he met at the club, and since Jenny is amazing in bed, it's not surprising that once was not enough, and he continued to date her. But for Jenny, they became soulmates, hearts and flowers, we are meant to be together, kisses in the moonlight. In fact, it might have been that way for her even before she first jumped into bed with him. I don't think Jenny is the type to have a cold-blooded affair just because a guy has turned her on and she wants a new experience in bed. Although, I guess the last few months have shown me how little I knew my wife, so why should you believe anything I say? If anything, they say that for women, it is rare that intimate attraction itself can lead them to cheat. And I suspect that Jenny actually fell for his tricks and decided that she really loved him before she let him get that far. So, things got serious and emotional, and Jenny got really into it. I don't know what Alec really told her. I have no idea if he thought he loved her too, but either way, he didn't push her away or slow her down. She began seeing him more and more often, arranging long lunches or doctor's appointments during office hours so they could spend time together. Only for her, it was not ballet. It was intimate intercourse with the love of her life. And they must have made plans together, when she would tell me, when she would move in with him, all the financial arrangements, everything. This was part of it gradually. I never knew anything, and even looking back, there was little I could understand. Jenny was sweet and affectionate at home. We still went out almost as often as before. She made sure Alex stayed away from her during our nightly walks. We still made love more or less as always. One evening, I came home to dinner, and Jenny was crying. I saw it in her face. Of course, I was worried, asked her about it, and tried to console her. All she told me was that a friend at work was very sick. She was vague about it, and I didn't press her. It was only after the roof fell on my head that I thought about it again. Jenny probably planned what she was going to do and felt guilty about what it might do to me. At least, I'd like to think she felt a little guilty. So, it was gradual. It suddenly came in a typical way. For the most part, I had a 2-day training session in Cleveland, which is almost 4 hours away. So, I planned to stay overnight. And then, the first day's session was canceled, and since I wasn't due back in Cleveland until 10 a.m. the next day, I decided to surprise Jenny and go home for the night. It was a long drive, but I really love my wife. I bought a beautiful bouquet in Cleveland and hit the road around 6:30, arriving at my house around 10:15. There was a car parked in front of the house, but there were cars parked up and down our street. There was nothing unusual about that. Again, most of what I'm telling you is what I remembered later, as I replayed it over and over again, obsessed, unable to get it out of my head. And I remembered all sorts of details that I was too overwhelmed to see at that time. I entered the house and immediately went up the stairs to our bedroom. The door was wide open, and after taking 2 steps, I stopped dead in my tracks. The room was softly lit by a couple of candles on the nightstand. Without clothes, Alec and Jenny were dozing in our bed. He leaned against the pillows on my side, and she lay with her head on his chest and her arms around him. The room smelled of candles. I never found out if they were between rounds or finished for the night, but it doesn't really matter, does it? I'm not very quick to think in situations like this. I tend to freeze or move slowly and carefully rather than go crazy. The madness comes later. So, to my eternal shame, I didn't drag him out of bed and kick him in the balls. I didn't even scream. I dropped the flowers and said, "What the hell is this?" in a quiet, stunned voice. Well, their eyes flew open, and they looked at me in fear. As for what happened after that first moment, I replayed that movie over and over again in my head a million times. A smug grin appeared on Alex's face. What a deceived husband, poor fool. But I was not looking at him, but at Jenny. And after that first shocked moment when she grabbed the sheet and pulled it up to cover her breasts from me, her husband, what I saw on her face was a soft, sympathetic look, almost with pity. She said, "Nick, I didn't want anyone to find out about it like that." Notice what she didn't say. Now, "I'm so sorry," or "it doesn't mean anything," or "he doesn't mean anything," or "please forgive me," or "I love you," or "it was just a night." No, she just said this phrase to me, looking so calm and so sorry. And then, without the slightest sign of fear or embarrassment, she turned to me and said, "I'll talk to you tomorrow," and she smiled at him. And Alec gets out of bed, still grinning, takes his clothes, and calmly leaves the room and goes down the stairs. What am I doing? I'm still standing in the middle of the room, frozen, shocked, motionless, like a wild coyote running off a cliff and not yet noticing that he's 100 feet up and about to plummet to the bottom of the canyon. Neither Jenny nor I moved until we heard the front door open and close. Then she said, still calm and benevolent, "We need to talk, dear. Let me take a quick shower, and we can talk downstairs, okay?" And she got out of bed, pulling the sheet over herself. Why? Because I wasn't supposed to see her without clothes anymore after 4 years of marriage. I don't have the slightest idea. And she walked straight out of the room and into the bathroom, closing the door behind her. A moment later, I heard the sound of a shower running. There were a lot of things I could have done back then, and you might think I was a complete idiot for not doing any of them. I could have gone into the shower and beaten the crap out of her, or thrown all her clothes out of the bedroom window, or set the house on fire with her in it. Or I could have gotten in the car and driven back to Cleveland, or just driven to a bar or to Davis's house and gotten drunk as hell. But at the moment, I was only thinking about going back to Cleveland, and I realized that if I did this, I wouldn't see Jenny for another 24 hours. As stunned as I was, I needed to know what the hell was going on. I mean, I knew what the hell was going on. I caught my wife and her lover in my bed, but I needed to know what it meant. Yes, I know, but besides the obvious, I needed to know the rest. How long, why, who else, what's next? I'm not angry yet. It just didn't fit in my head. That day, I learned that you can actually see something with your own eyes and still not believe it, at least at first. So, I went downstairs, sat at the kitchen table, stared at the wall, and didn't think about anything for 20 minutes. I don't think I had a single coherent thought until Jenny walked into the room, beautiful, fresh from her shower, wrapped in a yellow terry robe, her hair damp and shiny. If I weren't still so overwhelmed, I would have started crying, screaming, and possibly throwing things. Instead, we sat and had the most surreal conversation of my life. "Nick, I'm so sorry you had to see that. I didn't expect you home until tomorrow," Jenny said. "Baby, what's happened? Does it matter? They canceled today's session, and I wanted to surprise you." A pleasant surprise. I pointed to the flowers I had brought her, which lay lonely on the kitchen table. She looked down for a minute, then back at me. "I never expected it to happen like this. I was going to talk to you about this tomorrow evening when you get back from your trip." "Talk about what?" "About the fact that you now have a lover on the side and you wanted to keep me informed?" "That's very kind of you, Jenny," I said with bitterness. She winced and shook her head. "No, Nick, it's not like that at all. Nothing like this. She looked at me intently and even reached across the table to take my hand. Nick, you have to believe me. Alec and I love each other. Truly in love. And he is the person I want to spend the rest of my life with. I'm really sorry. I looked at her blankly. Are you in love with someone else? What the hell are you talking about? I didn't want this to happen, I swear to you, baby. But he is everything I ever wanted in a man. She must have seen the shock and pain on my face and hurried on. Oh, honey, don't take it that way. You were so wonderful to me, so persistent, loyal, and loving. But our life together is so, well, ordinary. You are strong and reliable, but with Alec, it's magical. It's exciting, wild, and unpredictable. Every moment feels like a roller coaster ride. I have never felt anything like this in my life before, Nick. I have to be with him. I'm really sorry. I was going to tell you about it tomorrow night and move out on Saturday. I think I should move everything up a day. Jenny, my lord, I can't believe it. How did it happen? How long have you been having this affair? I asked, still holding her hand. Nick, it's not like that at all, she spoke sharply, then relaxed again. We first met in Mercedes about 4 months ago. We just danced a few times, nothing more. And then we bumped into each other a couple of times at lunch, and after that, we started having lunch together, and it was incredible. We have so much in common, as if we were destined to be together forever from birth. We just haven't found each other yet. I stared at her, desperately trying to collect my thoughts. I must have had an IQ of about 72 back then, and you tell me, are you saying that you are leaving me for him? I asked, still holding her hand. Yeah, baby, I'm really sorry. I never meant to hurt you. Then her face got that damn excited expression again. I want to slap her every time I think about it, and she said, but it's just what's supposed to happen, Alec and me. After that, we sat in silence for some time. She probably looked at me with sympathy. Poor baby, I know, hurt him, and I was in some kind of comatose state. What just happened to me was so incredible that even in my dreams, I could not imagine that I was numb and stupefied, and the vows we took, you know. Love and honor and cherish and leave everyone else and all that, are you just joking? Are you crossing your fingers? A pained but patient expression appeared on her face, like a mother talking to a difficult child. Nick, I was serious, you know? I thought that we would be together all our lives. It's as much of a shock to me as it is to you. I didn't plan this, I didn't want this, it just happened. And if it makes any difference, I'm very, very sorry. Actually, yes, it's so unfair to you, I know. Silence again. I still felt numb, like I couldn't see or hear. Well, like my head was stuffed with cotton. A few minutes later, I suddenly stood up and poured myself a glass of water, still facing the sink and not looking at her. I said, I want you and your things out of here by the time I get back tomorrow. I suddenly, desperately, even madly, wanted to be away from the house, away from her eyes. I guess I realized that I was about to lose her. I vaguely heard her say, okay, honey, and ran out the door without looking back. I only made it 4 blocks before tears started pouring out of my eyes, and I had to stop. I cried, sobbed, pounded the dashboard with my fists, kicked the floor, and generally looked like a 6-year-old child who had fallen into hysterics. This went on for about 10 minutes, with anger, pain, and sadness mixed together. And when it subsided, I wiped my face, started the car, and drove straight to Cleveland, which, amazingly enough, I managed to get to without hitting anyone or anything along the way. It was after 2:30 a.m. when I got there. I fell straight into bed and managed to fall asleep. Then I slept the entire next day and drove slowly back to Dayton. There's no point in rushing. Her clothes were gone, her cosmetics, her purses, etc., and she took some of our CDs, but not too many. And no furniture or stereo equipment. I assumed she was moving in with Alec, although she didn't say so. And not a single photograph. Not one of the many photographs of us, wedding photographs, honeymoon photographs, and candid photographs of us and our families that were displayed throughout the house. I don't know why she was worried, but she left me a note. One sentence, not even worth the time to write. Nick, I'm so sorry. I will always remember you. Jenny. So, this was my first nightmare. Enough details for you? I hope so, because there's not much else that I can tell you about, with the exception of some consequences. I think you might be interested in this too. My anger grew slowly and tentatively. As the shock wore off, it became a little more real for me that my beloved wife, the love of my life, left me, fell in love with someone else, and went to him. From the first night, I knew that I would never be able to sleep in our bedroom again after what I had seen. Without even looking around, I moved all my clothes and belongings into the guest bedroom. The double bed there would be big enough for me. It wasn't until Sunday afternoon that I returned to the master bedroom and looked around. In my mind's eye, I still saw them both without clothes in bed, with the pillows propped up against the headboard. I saw candles on the nightstand and smelled intim in the air. All this, of course, disappeared. Jenny changed the sheets, made the bed, put away the candles, and everything was as if nothing had happened. And at that moment, I went a little crazy. I'm not too proud of what I did next, although I think that's part of how I dealt with it. The clean, untouched appearance of the bedroom infuriated me. I wanted to see it again the way it was. I started to get really angry and started to cry. I took out the candles, put them on the night table, and lit them. And I opened the bed, pulled off the top sheet, and put the pillows as they were. I simply blew out the candles, left the room, and closed the door behind me. That's how I created my shrine in honor of my unfaithful wife, a mess. But after 2 or 3 weeks, the fun left the project, or the madness left me. I don't know. And for more than 5 months, I have never opened the door or entered the room. How else did I survive the first few weeks? I went to work. I didn't tell anyone what happened, except Davis. He came over on a Saturday afternoon, and I sat him down with a beer and told him the whole story, every word I could remember. He looked at me in shock, in absolute amazement. All he said was, "Jesus Christ," several times, shaking his head. And when I finished, he just continued to sit there and shake his head. "This," he finally said slowly, "and she thinks she's in love with this idiot." That's what she says. He's the love of her life, the one she's been waiting for all her life, even if she didn't know it before. While I don't know. Mr. Slow and Steady, the reliable but boring one she only thought she loved. We sat a little longer, and he said, "I wanted to ask you what you were going to do, but it's too early for that. How about hitting some golf balls?" And that's how Davis helped me get through it. We hit golf balls, we watched football on TV, we drank beer, although, oddly enough, I never got drunk and didn't want to. We had a lot of long conversations in the first few weeks about Jenny and me and what I wanted to do now. Sometimes we talked about him and Kathleen, the woman he sometimes dated. I decided to keep the house. I could take out a mortgage on my salary, and I didn't want to move. But I decided not to file for divorce. To hell with it. If she wants to marry this jerk, she can apply and pay the lawyer bills. It wasn't a big deal to me anyway. I canceled all my credit cards and got a couple of new ones. Talking to Davis also helped me realize that I needed to do something. I needed to find ways not to sit at home alone, staring at the walls. I did karate for years, once or twice a week, and worked my way up to brown belt, but it was just tomfoolery now. I took it seriously. I started going to 4 or 5 classes a week and doing extra sparring in the backyard. Karate was perfect. It forced me to focus and be disciplined, to concentrate on what I was doing and nothing else. 90-minute classes turned into oases without the thought of Jenny, well, after a while, anyway. And needless to say, what a great outlet for my anger. To punch, kick, hit my opponent, or even into the void. I probably don't have to tell you how many times I imagine Alex's grinning face on the receiving end of my punches. And when I got to the 4th level of black belt, there are 12 levels, but almost no one gets to the very top, I started breaking the boards with my hand. It was very nice. So, now you know what I know, and for me, that was more than enough to make me miserable but not enough to really understand it. I mean, how does a woman who is happily married fall in love with another man? I know it's happening, but how is it happening? Jenny wasn't unhappy with me, and I still don't believe it wasn't me she was looking for, but that damn Alec put his foot in the door, and then he played with her. And somehow he made her believe that they were soulmates, destined to be together like Romeo and Juliet, Tristan and Isolde, Hero and Leander. I read a lot of books in college, maybe Bonnie and Clyde. I watched a lot of movies too. Now, 8 months had passed, and I was starting to feel like the worst was over, and I could start thinking about a new life without Jenny. And now, she says she wants to get back with me. I really hoped that after the day Jenny arrived, everything would be over. I listened to what she wanted and gave her my answer. I, of course, didn't let her spill all her chatter, but less than a week had passed before my mother started taking care of me again. By this time, I never picked up the phone, so it was just texts. She's sorry for what she did, Nick. She's truly sorry. You should have heard how she talks about you. You should give her another chance. That was the essence, although my mother found different ways to express it. I called her on Saturday morning, just before I left for karate, so she couldn't keep me on the phone. Mom, it's me. Please listen to me, okay? I have I repeat, no intention of dating Jenny again. Everything is over. Thinking about her, talking about her, seeing her, makes me feel even worse. You are my mother and should be on my side, right? So, please, don't mention Jenny again. There was a long silence. Then she said in an offended voice, well, of course, I'm on your side, Nick. Jenny is we have to go, Mom. Goodbye. I interrupted her to say these words and hung up. My mom will never get this. Continued in the next video. Subscribe to the channel and click on the bell so you don't miss the second final part. The link to the second part will be in the description of this video below. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you. And go ahead and listen to the next story because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one. What do you think of our first part of the story today? I liked it very much, especially the husband's reaction to the affair, very calm and not aggressive. What's your opinion? Write in the comments. Until new videos.